2차 세계대전이 발발한 지 60년 후 전 세계 곳곳에서 전쟁의 모습을 담은 컬러 화면이 발견됐다. 보통 사람들의 편지와 일기를 통해서 인류 역사의 흐름을 바꿔놓은 2차 세계대전의 새로운 모습을 엿볼 수 있다. 그럼 지금부터 일기를 쓴 사람들과 아마추어 카메라맨들의 기억을 더듬어 본다.
The nightmares were coming, and I was in the water again, kicking myself clear, coming up in the sea, red with blood.
Such a horrifying thing from beginning to end. We didn't want a war. People had no idea what it would mean.
It turns men who could be civilized, decent people into beasts. It is necessary for people to become beasts in order to fight a war.
This is no war of chieftains or of princes, of dynasties or national ambition. This is a war of the unknown warrior.
영국이 선전포고를 하자마자 런던의 사이렌이 울리기 시작했다. 하이게이트 병원에 근무하던 기네스 토마스는 전쟁이 일어나자 일기를 쓰기로 결심하고 매일 저녁 책상 앞에 앉아서 일기를 썼다.
Then the warning came. One of the consultants had come up to my ward with gas masks and tell me to make every patient put them on. Look, the patients couldn't breathe, and now they were terrified, all crying and pleading not to put them on. Well, I didn't make them put them on. We were given the option that we could get out of London as soon as the war broke out. I don't think any more than 2 nurses went home. No, we'll stay here and help.
에섹스주 엄민스터 출신의 휴보는 전쟁이 일어나기 전엔 평화주의자였지만 1939년 10월 군대에 지원했다.
I felt it was right. I felt we had to do it. I was doing the right thing, the only thing I could do. Because I was the sort of person I am, I could not stand aside. It might be wicked, it might be awful, but I couldn't stand aside and pretend that I was any different or better or anything else. I got to be in. When you're trained to use a bayonet, you're trained to shout and swear and rush at the thing and put all you've got into shoving your bayonet through this sack. Thrust it forward, pull it out, stamp on the body on the ground. You're taught to go mad. You only fight if you're mad, if you're off your head and angry and shouting and doing things you wouldn't normally do. You have to become a beast.
광부의 아들인 켄 오컬리는 1940년 1월 군에 입대했을 때 18살이었다.
Some of the things that we were asked to do were crazy, no doubt about that, but the end thing was that we couldn't allow Hitler to carry on as he had, otherwise we would all be under the thumb.
If you're faced with a fight, what can you do? If I was faced with a man who was attacking my wife or my children, and I had a gun in my hands, I would shoot them. I would have no hesitation.
전쟁이 일어나기 전 말콤과 제니스 이슨 부부는 컴브리아주 캔들에 있는 보험회사에 다녔다.
We couldn't afford to get married with the wages we were getting in the insurance company. We were sort of trying to save up, and then the war came, and you earned more than you were.
Oh, I did, really. Although that wasn't a lot either, but just enough then.
말콤이 영국 공군에 입대했을 때 둘은 페버샴의 성 피터스 교회에서 결혼식을 올릴 수 있었다. 제니의 대고모가 결혼식 장면을 컬러 화면에 담았다.
Oh, now then, isn't that nice? Seeing this film again after nearly
yes,
60
look at
years.
the roses. And there's your dad.
Yes, our little bridesmaids now.
And there's Jim.
Oh, yes. That's a nice shot of
yes.
those two, isn't it?
Jean, you can hardly believe she's a granny now.
No. Yes, and what a job you had to get flowers. Things are very scarce in wartime. Everything was rationed almost.
I made my own wedding dress. My mother helped. She did all the little button holes on the sleeves, and then afterwards I loaned it to two friends, and they both were married in the same dress.
Here we are, ready for going away on that honeymoon. My teeth show well, don't they?
Well, we look very happy.
Oh, yeah. We're still
Just as much in
in
love
love as ever,
when,
I think.
when we first met. After all these years.
메리 블룸필드는 코번트리의 그레이스포드 애비뉴에 살았다. 메리는 거의 매일 일기를 썼다. 1940년 6월 8일, 메리는 독일 침공에 대한 두려움을 일기에 담았다.
News has been coming in of parachutists dressed as clergymen landing in Norway. Women are particularly afraid, as we hear that if you're young and healthy, you might be shipped to Germany to a baby farm to be mated to Germans.
We've all decided we ought to have a pile of hand grenades in the bedroom near the window in case the Germans and their tanks come up our street. I was just 25, and you wondered what you'd do if these soldiers suddenly came. But we were frightened of them, or what would happen, and what you'd do to defend yourself in your home. And so I thought that out. I thought the direct approach wouldn't get you anywhere, so you'd have to put a false face on and pretend to be sociable. And that's what I thought I'd do. I'd say, you poor boy, you look very tired. Come and sit down, I'll make you a nice cup of tea. And then I would put something in it, you see, and then he'd go to sleep and he wouldn't wake up. But of course, I had not faced the fact that the Germans, other Germans would arrive to look for him, and they'd want to know how he died. And then, of course, I don't know what my fate would have been. I don't know what would have happened. I hadn't got any poison, by the way. I think I got some stuff we put in the water softener or something.
When the homeland is in danger and there's trouble in the air, we forget our little squabbles and its trespassers beware. All the nation is united.
1940년 여름, 17살의 성가대 소년 노리스 리들은 링컨셔 시민군에 입대했다. 아마추어 카메라맨이던 버넌 클락이 시민군의 모습을 화면에 담았다.
That's my squad. There I am. 3 down from the front.
Whatever may befall, the richest in the land, the poorest of us all.
I was 17 and they was asking for recruits, and I thought, well, why not? And it was only, I think it was only true to your country to do your bit. This was the practice of the grenade throwing. The first hand grenade I got in my hand, I was terrified. It was very scary to think that you'd got that in your hand and it could go off any time. Because only a few weeks before the chap was in the dugout, he dropped it and they'd no time to run out, blew into pieces. If the Germans did get across, you wonder what happened. I don't think we should have done them much good.
매일 밤 뉴스와 처칠의 연설은 전쟁 때문에 떨어져 사는 가족들에게 많은 힘이 돼주었다.
At 9 o'clock every night, the chimes of Big Ben preceded the 9 o'clock news, and we too thought of each other at 9 o'clock. While that was happening,
Yes.
it was our special sort of time to...
Well, we were linked in spirit then.
Yes.
And then Churchill, we all had faith in Churchill, didn't we?
It was
Winston Churchill.
Yes.
And now it has come to us.
He was the right man in the right place at the right time.
And face the worst that the tyrant's might and enmity can do.
We felt that he would bring us through somehow.
Bearing ourselves humbly before God.
Our Churchill, we worshipped him.
An unfolding purpose.
There was no man anywhere as big as Churchill. And he'd had a rough time getting to where he got. She used to come over on the radio and encourage us.
We shall fight on the beaches.
We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them in the air. We will not be defeated.
We shall never surrender.
And he was wonderful.
간호사였던 기네스 토마스는 여름 내내 영국 공군 전투기 조종사들이 공중전을 벌이는 모습을 지켜봤다.
We just stood there and certainly did not believe that they would drop on us. We couldn't believe it would happen. And I watched our boys in the sky, and the Germans came through and they were fighting. It was just as though you were watching a football match. And we were saying, "That's right, boys, go on, blow them up, blow." And then we were likely to be dead the next minute.
영국 공군이 브리튼 전투에서 승리하자 히틀러는 영국의 주요 도시를 폭격하기 시작했다.
I was absolutely petrified. I shook from head to foot. And we thought, well, best thing to do, I thought, I'll get under my bed. And then I looked up and saw springs. I thought, oh no, I'm not having those through me. So I went back onto the bank in the corridor.
기네스는 매번 공습이 끝날 때마다 일기를 썼다.
26th of September. Thank God we're still here. Nearer and nearer they've seemed to come each night.
Three firemen were badly hit.
hit.
2 were stationed at this hospital up to a month ago. Bill, as everyone knows him, he was one. Gives you a cold feeling inside when someone you know has been hit. Now we are beginning to see the results of Hitler's madness.
My diary was always in my bedroom. I'd come off duty, get to my bedroom, and I'd write what I had been through. Writing is my therapy. If ever I get distressed about anything, I put it on paper. When people say, were you frightened? We were in a peculiar state of shock. You just did things automatically. You got so used to it. And wherever you went, you'd go down a street that you knew was just rows of houses and there was nothing there. I saw a whole street go. I mean, most of the people were killed. I just happened to look out of the window when that particular bomb dropped. I mean, the only thing I ever hoped for at any time was that I wouldn't be buried alive. I don't know how we did it. Don't ask me how we went through it. I don't know.
It was a beautiful poem. I doubt if you'll find an ex-Spitfire pilot anywhere in the world. At the very mention of the name, his eyes will not take on a glazed look, and you go back into dreamland. It was a lovely aircraft to fly. After the Battle of Britain, I would say every teenager in the United Kingdom wanted to be a Spitfire pilot. Every single teenager, bar none.
리버풀 출신의 키스 리는 17살이 되자마자 영국 공군에 입대했다.
I went and presented myself to the flight sergeant. He didn't exactly look at me like I was God's gift to the RAF, but he did send me for a medical and a selection board.
키스는 비행 훈련을 받기 위해 미국으로 갔다.
Mopping up soda pop Ricky to our heart's delight. Dance to swing a real quickie, jukebox Saturday night.
Oh, there's me sitting in the deck chair, as ever, very self-conscious. And you can see us larking about in the garden.
키스를 비롯한 영국 공군 훈련병들은 주말마다 오클라호마주 툴사에 있는 홀시의 집에서 보냈다. 홀시 부부가 영국 조종사들의 모습을 컬러 화면에 담았다.
It was another world opening up. After war-torn England, with rationing and blackouts, I mean, there was a great big world opening up for us. We were given almost daily lectures on decorum and behaviour. Things like, say, whistling at young ladies, that was a capital offence. You sort of didn't do that at all. Oh dear. On the right hand, there's me, and keep trying to duck out of the way. I don't think I had the stuff that film stars were made of.
열여섯 살이던 돈 굴드는 영국에 온 미군의 잘생긴 외모와 멋진 몸매에 반했다. 그녀는 매일 저녁 일기를 썼다.
Went to the Bellevue last night. Hawks and Freeman's is now being made into a club for Yanks. Cool. Harry Berman brought me some records. Glenn Miller in the Mood, Harry James, You Made Me Love You, and the Woodchopper's Ball.
Woodchopper's Ball. We did a good conga and jitterbug. Oh, Mama, Snake Hips.
Snake Hips was a Latin American sailor. Oh, he was the most wonderful dancer. when you got a good partner, everybody in the ballroom would come and stand around you in a big circle, and you get more and more frenzied. It would be wonderful. And where I was such a tall girl, I often used to have my partner jump up into my arms instead of me into his. I used to do it the other way round, and I always carried them off the floor afterwards and deposited them on a chair.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top.
Well, of course, not counting the accent, which we all knew from the films, I think it was their manners. They were so polite. They called everybody ma'am, and they say, excuse me, ma'am, and pardon me, ma'am, and the things that we weren't used to. The English boys had very, very rough cloth, and sometimes it was impregnated with anti-gas material, and it smelled awful sulphury. And with the Americans, they had this very good quality cloth, and you could feel the difference. And they had the advantage of the aftershave lotion, lovely white teeth, beautiful uniforms, and of course our boys then did get a bit jealous, but you can understand it why.
There's a little bit of animosity. They had a lot more money than we had. Our wages weren't very high, and they weren't frightened about flashing it, you know, to entice, which, you know, was used to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable.
We never came much into contact with the American forces, did we?
No.
But yes, I think there would be a tendency to ease moral standards at that time.
I think it was definitely the American mentality. You're either cheap and easy, or you're the girl next door, or the girl his sister goes to school with, you know. They just got that mentality that there's good girls and bad girls, which is really pretty good. Of course, it won't be like it now. They're all at it, aren't they?
Well, you tended to wait till you were married to have full intimacy, didn't you? Yeah. We did.
Yes.
(1943년 7월) 22살의 선원이던 켄 오클리는 시칠리아 상륙 작전 당시 자신의 경험을 기록했다.
Reading through it, I wondered how the heck I coped with it, a lot of the things that are written there. And I was just a boy from a village. And I joined the Navy and learned how to cope with all that. And managed to get through it. At last the order came. Lower boats! We were away. With far from enemy machine guns passing over them. Tat-tat-tat, our Bren guns began to speak. Then crunch, down door,
and we were there. A sapper began to cry, plead, and cling to the floorboards, swearing he couldn't move. We left him. His nerve was gone. The shrill whine of bullets speeded us on. Then it came.
That was bang. And then I was in the water, dragged down. Someone clutching my feet, trying to hold on to me. but I couldn't get up. I finally kicked myself clear and rose to the surface amid a sea full of blood, arms, legs, men's insides. I'll never ever eat tripe again, because that is what a man's flesh is like when he's blown out of it. And I finally, after a lot of struggling, got to the beach where I collapsed. I came to, hearing a voice, "Oh my God, help me, save me. Oh my God, help me, save me." I looked and went to the gangplank. And on the gangplank was the captain, Padre, who I'd been speaking to on the landing craft. His legs were gone, and he was crying out for help. His God sent me along, and I carried him down the gangplank, where I collapsed on the beach. And then I left him for medical aid. Carried on to do my job. A few days later, it came back to me what had happened on the beach. And the nightmares were coming, and I was in the water again, kicking myself clear, coming up in the sea, red with blood. During the day, I could cast it out of my mind with things to do. But at night, when I put my head down to sleep, then it would come back to me. Later, I was able to purchase a notebook, and in the notebook I wrote it out, a full account of what had happened. And then my head settled, and I was able to temporarily forget all the traumatic things that had happened on the beach in Sicily.
(1943년 5월) 제8 대공포부대 벨파스트 연대 해리포터는 인도에 도착했다.
We were 6 weeks on board ship, and we got off the ship in Bombay and were allowed a couple of days leave. And I was walking up one of the main shopping centres, and there was a firm called Eastman Kodak, and I'd never heard of them. And I looked in the window, just arrived from America, a nice little camera, about 8 inches by 4 inches, and a lot of coloured film, which I didn't even know existed.
해리는 카메라와 컬러 필름을 샀다. 그리고 곧 그의 연대는 버마까지 2.4km에 달하는 행군을 시작했다.
Unfortunately, as soon as we got to the edge of the Burma border and Iglit came out, no cameras allowed east of the Brahmaputra. But I said to myself, well, I've gotten a camera, I may as well keep it. So gradually I got enough courage to bring my camera out now and again, which I did. It was decreed that we should learn the art of self-defense and silent killing. And this is me taking a dagger off one of the boys. Our immediate program was the Japanese in front of us. We were amazed that when we blew the tops off their bunkers and dugouts, that they didn't surrender the way any sensible soldier might have done, but they committed harikari. But we didn't have any great hatred for them. We were doing a job the way we were. The hatred came after the war when the stories came out. I would say our trouble in Burma was the 3 M's: morale, malaria, and the third one was the monsoon. We fought the monsoon as much as we could, but we quickly realized with our heavy equipment you couldn't move it during monsoon because everything turned to mud. Everything was damp. Clothes, food, a lot.
Near Banbridge town in the county down one morning last July.
In our 3.5 years in Burma, we only saw one concert party. We had to make up our own amusements, and these are the boys dressed up. Where they got the clothes from, I didn't ask any questions. It was childish looking at it now, but to us it was great fun. We laughed our heads off. And we hadn't seen a girl for, over 3 years. You can understand that any diversion was very welcome.
스물여섯 살의 소설가 모이라 맥클라우드는 유럽 침공을 준비하던 해군 작전 참모들과 함께 지내며 비밀 일기를 기록했다.
Sunday afternoon was still and breathless. Strict bans were in force. No conversations with civilians, no private telephone calls, and all naval personnel confined to their places of duty.
We knew that D-Day was coming, but nobody knew when. The sea was absolutely chock-a-block. Torbay was jammed with craft. You could almost walk from one to the other. It was the most exciting thing.
D-Day 사흘 전날, 돈 고울드는 미군과 약혼했다.
His name was Stuart. He was in the American 1st Division. He was so dark and handsome. I really was thrilled to bits. They'd been shut in their barracks for several days. Nobody was allowed out at all. So I went out there with someone in a jeep and saw him out there and said goodbye to him. Didn't get right close to him. I just waved to him and said goodbye through the barbed wire, you know.
Then it began to be rather pathetic because they kept giving me envelopes and saying, will you please post this? This is for my family, you know, and what about, this is the money for the stamps. And it began to be very moving.
글레넌호에 승선했던 휴번 중위는 작전을 앞두고 만반의 준비를 갖추었다.
In a sense, we were expectant. We were looking forward. We boarded our ship, but there was a delay of 24 hours, so we stayed on shipboard. It was sunny, actually. I sat in a little boat moored by our boat and went to sleep part of the time. We all felt this is it. This is really it. It was excitement because your first action is exciting. My experience was not peculiar to me. It's only after you know what's involved you begin to get frightened.
연합군 함대는 영국 해협에 모였다. 휴번을 비롯한 100만 명의 병사들은 프랑스를 향해 떠났다.
It was night. I think we were all excited. I didn't detect any sort of anything other than people feeling like me, really. I went to bed, slept.
영국 해군 특공대원이었던 켄 오클리는 오론테스호에 타고 있었다. 시칠리아 상륙 작전에서 살아남은 지 1년이 지난 후였다.
The senior army officer who gave us the pep talk the night before, he said, many of you will not survive the first assault wave. He said, some of you might survive the second. He said, but not to worry. We shall just pass over you until we have captured the beach. That is the thing that must be done. You must capture the beach.
Complete silence fell and an emptiness. It's very sort of still, very still. We'd done all we could. And then we stopped and listened, and we heard in the distance, boom, 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 the guns beginning to fire over in France.
역사상 가장 규모가 큰 상륙 작전이 시작됐다. D-Day. 새벽 5시 30분. 연합군 전함이 프랑스 해안을 향해 포탄을 퍼붓기 시작했다.
We got into the boats. The padre said some prayers. You sat on a little piece of wood. There are 3 rows like this. You sat one behind the other as we kept our heads down.
As we boarded the craft, we could hear the huge shells that were being fired by the battleships. It was awe-inspiring as they whizzed overhead. Shells weighing about a ton each.
휴보는 어머니에게 쓰는 편지에 상륙 작전의 두려움을 그대로 전했다.
By now we could hear the enemy machine guns, the explosions of enemy mortars on the beach. We clutched our weapons. Now was the moment.
Stuff was falling pretty close to us. People were hit. Some were dead, others struggling to crawl out of the water. We couldn't help them. Our job was to push on. There were some horrible sights. Men calling out for help. I wanted to pull a body out of the waves, but he looked to be dead. I had no time or duty there.
People were being hit. The boat next to us, when they opened the ramp, bullets went straight in. Our padre was wounded, our medical officer was killed. We'd been given strict instructions not to give any first aid or help, because our job was to get across the beach and onto our target, leaving the beach for others coming after us to come in.
It was very, very bad when we landed. When you hear bullets whizzing through the air, you think, well, I've got to get under some cover. I've got to do something about this. I've got to find out where it's coming from. Can I attack? Can I reach them with the gun I have?
I realized that we were being shelled and I couldn't get away from it. I was suddenly afraid.
The scene was one of devastation, bodies everywhere. Around you, people crying out for help.
You cope with it by saying, well, nevertheless, I must carry on, but you become a little more frightened every time something lands near you. The provost sergeant was wounded just by me. He'd been hit in the shoulder and he was very pale, and he talked about a letter to his mother and so on. But I put my arms around him and put my field dressing on him and, you know, looked after him as you do. You learn then to do things that I wouldn't have learned perhaps other ways. It would take me a long time to put my arm around anybody, but you just do.
I was working on the water's edge, and I heard the sound of pipes. I couldn't believe it until I looked to my right and saw the piper marching along with his kilt on and playing as if he was on the playground in London. Then the whole group of No. 6 Commando had formed up in column of threes on the landing craft, and with Lord Lovat and the piper leading them, they marched off the landing craft, through the water, onto the beach, up into the village, with the piper playing ahead of them. And I could hear the most impressive thing that you could ever imagine happening. Incredible. He had a lot of guts to march along playing that pipes. He raised the spirits of all of us on that beach that day. But if a piper could play, what did Germans do? Oh, rubbish.
One of our squaddies was walking out forward with a machine gun, and he saw a bunch of Germans walking back with their hands behind their head. They'd been taken prisoners, only about 7 or 8 of them. But he'd just lost his best friend, and he turned his machine gun on and machine gunned the lot. Now, that was anger and temper. He wouldn't have done it if he'd thought a bit about it and waited a bit longer, but in the heat of the moment, that sort of thing could happen. We were all victims of war.
웨이머스의 돈 골드는 미군 약혼자인 스튜어트에게 소식이 오기만을 기다렸다.
I did hear from him a couple of times, and then I had a bunch of my own letters back all tied together. It said deceased, return to sender. And that's when I wrote to his sisters, and they said that he'd been killed, but they didn't know where. Not being a wife, an official next of kin, his sisters were his next of kin, so I didn't write a proper telegram or letter. I just had all the letters returned. And I had the souvenirs he'd given me from Sicily and North Africa, and I had a bundle of his letters, and that was all I had. And a couple of photos.
Here is the news. The end of the war in Europe was officially announced by Mr. Churchill at 3 o'clock this afternoon in a broadcast from 10 Downing Street.
There's a new world over the skyline. To find it, follow the sun.
We were so excited. London was awake again. And we kept bumping into each other. It's over, it's over, it's over. Oh, thank God it's over. Isn't it wonderful to be free? Isn't it wonderful to be able to go out?
Everybody was saying, well, now our Jack won't get killed, now our John will be home, and everyone was saying, thank God they'll all soon be home. It was like about 20 carnival days all rolled into one.
These are
I had a very, very large white ensign, which I brought home, and we flew that outside the house here, and that was really something. It's wonderful.
We'd been strung up for so long, we got so used to war, and we never thought it was going to end. It was the time when I was 21 till the time I was 27. Well, that's a lot of your life.
VE Day and VJ Day, they just didn't happen to me. This is the odd thing. I've learned more about them afterwards when I saw it on film. And it was the people who hadn't fought who celebrated. The ones who were fighting were still out there, or dead, or in hospital.
It was like a long horror story, and it was finished. There was no real joyfulness. There couldn't be. Too many people had been killed, and sons and husbands and friends and neighbours and that. I mean, it was such a... Oh, I can't describe it, really. Such a horrifying thing from beginning to end. We were pleased we'd beaten Hitler, but on the other hand, life in this country was very grim because the restrictions were tighter after the war than they'd been through the war. Well, actually, I had a nervous breakdown. A lot of people did.
I did not let myself linger too long on the bad things that had happened. I tried to think more of the future, what it would hold, and what we could do.
(60년) 동안 처칠의 말이 옳았다. 2차 대전은 지휘관들의 전쟁도 한나라의 야심에서 비롯된 전쟁도 아니며 바로 얼굴 없는 전사들의 전쟁이었다.
I don't criticize the young people for saying, oh, well, we've heard enough about it. How could you understand what we went through? How could you be sympathetic? Because you never went through it.
I feel very grateful that I was chosen to survive those traumatic events, and they have stood me in good stead all my life.
Life is full of tears. Life is like that, and you may have to cry, but there's no way of going around it. You can't turn your back on life.
We'd missed 6 years. For what is 6 years? It goes very quickly. It makes you appreciate that time goes awfully quickly, and you should fill each unforgiving minute.
By and large, things could be better. In a perfect world, everything could be better. But the world is not perfect. We've been quite happy, really.